My name is Susan Ward, and I am with the Bureau of Student Wellness for the New Hampshire Department of Education. Today, we'll be diving into some information that came out back a couple of weeks ago in the back to school guidance. The STRRT team created guidance for districts to consider when planning for the return to school for the upcoming academic year. And today I'm really focusing on one section, supporting student, family, and educator wellness, specifically for C, mental health resource partners. And due to the pandemic, as we know, students and staff may be returning to school having experienced some trauma. And each person and family and community responds quite differently to stressful events and may have experienced or still be experiencing some anxiety and depression, while others may seem to have processed things very differently. So it's important that school staff become familiar with recognizing and responding to signs of trauma and be able to support the social and emotional needs of all students. And educators can create a learning environment that prioritizes that psychological and physical safety, whether in the brick and mortar structure or virtually in the classroom. And school staff should really make sure they're referring students that require that extra mental health support to those community-based professionals. And it's actually quite beneficial to partner with these community mental health agencies in the district and throughout the schools. It makes communication quite easy. There's a relationship established, and it's important for teachers to actually also be able to use them as a resource for their own mental health and well-being as well. So when thinking of how to assist students this coming year, in not only assisting students, but also assisting families and school staff, it's really important to think of how this can be accomplished through different modalities and plan for all three. So considering how access will be adapted when connecting the local community mental health agency to the school. And this might require a change in policies that were not in place prior to COVID. So adjustments to agreements might need to be implemented with some flexibility to adjust for the circumstances of the upcoming year. So districts should be planning for the adjustment of maybe an existing MOU or the creation of an MOU that will allow mental health centers to discuss any changes, or schools to discuss any changes that might be needed to be edited on this form. And districts should be discussing and planning strategies on how they'll assist educators and school staff in mental wellness. So staff might be more likely dealing with heightened stress for sure, and it may be some anxiety while returning to the classroom, juggling a multitude of new routines, a multitude of new policies, and actually dealing with students who've had that trauma experience. So it's important to for school staff to be considered when planning for the return as far as mental health is concerned. And it's important teachers are trained to identify and respond to those signs of trauma, as mentioned before, just to make sure those emotional and social and emotional needs of students are being supported. Districts may want to offer some professional development to focus on trauma and any other mental health concerns that may be coming up. It's really important for those educators to establish a really strong relationship with students when they return, and having that be the main focus for maybe a couple of weeks. Because when students feel supported and they feel cared for from their educators, they're going to be more apt to continue to engage if changes in the routine occur, as we saw last year. And districts can support families by providing transparent and open communication about what school's going to do to provide safety, to provide those mental health supports. And districts can provide information to families about the local community mental health agency and other resources, so families understand how to access those. And schools might also want to consider providing a survey to obtain feedback about the information being communicated, and then, depending on the results of those surveys, adjust that accordingly. So some things to consider when looking at supporting the mental health of educators, students, and families is the CARES Act and the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Funding. It was funding to help schools prepare and respond to the impacts of COVID-19. And those details can be found for what this funding is used for on the link. And funding does provide cover providing mental health services and supports for schools and districts. And then another consideration is to think about how information is going to be communicated from districts and schools about mental health resources to students. And then in providing that information and communicating that out, how you know partnerships between community mental health centers are beneficial for students and families. So sending out a baseline survey to see the effectiveness to families, and then doing that again later in the year to make sure the information is that you're getting has a baseline so you can make any changes accordingly. And then you might have heard my colleagues and I talk about MTSS-B in the past, which is a multi-tiered system of supports for behavioral health and wellness. It's a systematic framework for teaching and reinforcing behavior for all students, as well as providing additional supports. And again, we mentioned that districts that do establish that partnership with CMHCs really help provide that support for students in a very effective way. And then this graphic shows just a really brief implementation of MTSS-B. It's a systems change, so it's not quick. It is a process that doesn't happen overnight, but it's effective when implemented with fidelity and really does produce positive results for not just the students in the school, but for the community as well. And speaking of resources, and when we're looking at some of the resources that the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness, my office, has been providing, we have several different resources that you can access information. So we have our website at NH Learns Remotely. We have our YouTube page at NH Student Wellness, which provides, I think we're over 90 videos now for different supports provided for educators and families, and all surrounding the subject of wellness. And then we have our Facebook channel at Bureau of Student Wellness. So that can be accessed at any time, as all of the resources are there for you to visit at your leisure. And throughout the spring and summer, there have been several organizations that have been offering free webinars that focus on the health and wellness of educators, students, and families. And one of the sites is the National Center for School Safety. They provide webinars, toolkits, training, other resources. We have the Mental Health Technology Transfer Center Network, and there are multiple webinars, free webinars on several different topics that may be beneficial to educators and districts. Notice that many of them are all centered on the mental health aspect and trauma responsiveness, as you can see here on Edutopia, which is another great organization that offers lots of resources. It really is just kind of the theme that you'll see occurring. And then we have the Illuminate Education. This is a upcoming webinar that discusses MTSS-B, which is what I just briefly discussed. So it seems to be a common theme that's helping students and schools kind of focus on, making sure they're firming up that mental health support in the schools. And then some other just general mental health support services. There's 211. For the family resource centers can be found in several locations in New Hampshire. And they help provide families some, help them kind of navigate other resources if needed. They can be accessed at the website located here. And then we have Waypoint Warm Line, and they offer support to parents and caregivers. There's a number in their hours of operation. For crisis support, there are several different organizations, the Domestic Violence Helpline, the crisis text line, 24/7 supports that can be accessed at any time. We have NAMI that has their website, phone number, and hours of operation as well. And then taking a closer look into the different regions of New Hampshire, we have some of our local mental health counseling centers. There's information here that includes their address, their emergency services, their phone numbers, and we have them throughout different regions of New Hampshire. This can also be accessed online. And then we go through, it goes through the, Central New Hampshire, Seacoast. And then we have some national resources, such as the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline that can be accessed in English and Spanish. And then we have the SAMHSA's National Helpline. So there's a website and number to call if you need to do that. And then we have the last of our series coming up next week. We have a few more videos to help us walk through the guidance of our guidance document. So please feel free to either join us at these times, usually 3 o'clock on YouTube, or you can access the recording as well. So if you aren't able to watch us live, you can go back and view it at any time. So I want to thank you so much for joining me, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.